All right, recording started. All right, so there are a few things that I immediately notice, and one thing that we want to focus on a framework is that, okay, you know what, having just a framework is it enough, right? What needs to be done? Like, what are the few things that we want to make sure that our framework can do? Right now, this framework can run tests and you can write tests and run tests, right? But what else can we do to it, right? Can we have to make sure that our framework um, can do cross browser, right? Cross browser testing. What that means is that you can change the browser as it goes, right? You can change browser whenever you need to. Um, and then we have, what else? Okay, yeah. The other one is maintainability, right? Maintainability of the framework. Oh, one of the thing about maintainability is that, which is very important, and I'll describe why. And we want to make sure that this framework is maintainable, right? It doesn't take so much time just to go through the existing tests and be able to maintain. And lastly, we want to make code reusable code. And this might be something that we will be able to do today, right? But let's see how far I can go. Maybe I'll go up to this two topic and the last one. And this is not going to be something where, oh, now we have a giant homework. And it's because many of you guys finished. There are some people still needs to catch up. So we're gonna be nice enough to kind of wait for them. But in the meantime, those who has already finished is gonna be a treat, right? The first thing, the first um, topic is cross browser testing. Is when you switch between different browser. Right now, you'll have to kind of like come into the code. You're gonna have to do it right from the code itself. We don't want that, right? We want our test classes not to have any sort of changes, right? We want to put that somewhere else where we can make these changes too, right? Um, and that's what we want to do. And let's see real quick, test classes, okay. Sources only have tests, okay. And then we want to have maintainability. And this is where you're going to learn page object model, right? So what is cross browser testing? Who wants to answer that?
I can give it a try.
Sure, sure.
I guess when you want to test your scripts on different browsers, it could be like Firefox, Mozilla, or Chrome. Um, if I'm not sure. I'm just assuming.
Yes, so when you test, it's pretty straightforward. Cross browser is basically when you test on multiple browsers. Now, how do you realize? Because nobody's going to tell you, like sometime in a company, you're going to see that nobody's coming and telling you, hey, you need to test on Firefox, Chrome, and IE. If your manager or if your lead is nice enough, he's going to say, make sure you're testing on these specific browsers because we need to do that. But now, if you join a company and they're not saying nothing about browser, they're not saying anything at all about the browser, what can you do as a tester? What it is that you need to do? You're going to reach out to your lead or your manager, whoever is the immediate next, right? Whoever actually helped you get up to speed with your work, whoever helped you to get on board. You tell them, hey, we are pretty much look like we're using Chrome only. What other browser can we be testing? Because we want to know which percentage of users are using our application on different browsers. So the decision has to be made based on, let's say, DevOps giving you some data, right? You don't make a decision just because, okay, Firefox is nice and Chrome is nice, so we're gonna do both, right? We don't do that, right? So you want to make sure that you get some data. So let's say your DevOps team says, okay, you know what? 20% people uses Firefox of this website, and let's say 50% uses Chrome. That's already 70%, and IE user is, let's say, 30%, right? So that's 100%, right? Or let's say IE user is 10% because it's not going to be a lot, right? So, and then you got yourself mobile user for 20%, right? Now, when you do cross-browser testing and you don't have everything ready just yet, what are you going to start? Okay, which browser are you going to start off with before you have, before you can test on other browsers? Which one is the priority here?
Chrome.
Chrome
Why?
browser,
Why?
because the percentage uses is more high here.
Right. Because what's going to happen is 50% users is going to be happy because you're testing on Chrome, and therefore none of the issues or any of the UI issues is not going to be in Chrome because you tested it to make sure there is no issues, right? And if that is the case, that means you made 50% of the user happy already. And versus if you focused on, let's say, IE, I'm going to test everything in IE, then you could be upsetting another 70% of the user, right? So you always start off the highest percentage of the users or traffic on the browser. So that's one thing. The second thing is that, okay, now that you are testing in Chrome and you have extra time, or you have extra resources, or you have even the automation task to run, and you say, you know what, the next thing, the next item we should be focusing on testing?
The Firefox.
Firefox, because if you think about mobile, right? If it's a mobile web, there's two things about mobile, right? Web or native app. So now native app is something that you open on your phone and you are able to download it from App Store or Android Store, right? And web is basically you click on something and it just takes you to a mobile browser. So now, if it's a web or if it's a native app is going to be something that we cannot automate using the current framework. We need to add more things to it before we can automate, right? So that requires a lot of work. Now, for the mobile web, we can test with Selenium, the current test engine, everything. The problem is that there is still some extra work, is because the layout of the application looks significantly different. Therefore, when you write the test, it'll be different. You have to write separate tests for web, or you have to think about how do you separate out tests that is only for mobile responsive testing. So there are some extra work. So immediately, if you go to, even though it's 20% and they're equal to each other, Firefox will be almost no work, right? Firefox, if you are testing on Firefox, it'll be almost zero work for you to move on to that. So now that you've covered 20% and 50%, you're good. So that's already like 70% covered. And then if you decide to IE is going to be a lot of effort because IE is different, right? Internet Explorer, I don't know why people still use that, but it comes with significant issue for the automation itself. I forget about, people are using it. I don't know why the people are used, to be honest. Even IE is going away, right? IE 11 is the highest probably, and now they're coming up with Edge and they're going based on that, right? So I don't know why people still do IE. Anyway, so the next possible thing you want to go into IE before you can go to the mobile, because it's going to be a significant amount of work. So you should be able to explain which browser you're covering and why you're covering those browsers, where you're getting your data from, and making these decisions. If you are the person who's making the decision, that's the first thing you need to think about. Okay, maintainability. And one of the biggest seller when I'm taking an interview for myself, or even anybody else is taking an interview, and what I recommend to mention is maintainability of a framework, right? Because maintainability is like one of the must-have feature in your test automation framework. And you can tell me like why. Let's say if you're building something and it's hard to maintain, for example, let's say you building a house, and now just to maintain that house you need to, let's say, spend $1,000 per day, meaning like you need to have you got bills, you have to have people to do things for you, And so that goes $30,000 like every month, no matter what, right? Think about how long can you own that house? $30,000 you have to just maintain your house, right? Plumbing issues, like every few minutes, every now and then there is plumbing issue, and now it causes you to repair the entire plumbing system, and then there's some electric issue, and it causes you to repair the entire electric system, and similarly other issues into the house. You're basically replacing the entire house little by little, right? So it's causing you as much as money that you would be spending on a new house. Now, how that is similar to framework is basically the same thing. Like when you wrote some test, little by little you have to improve, right? Because you didn't think about maintainability before. And now you're replacing tests and replacing tests and replacing tests. It would cost you the same amount of time if you were just building this test from scratch, right? Even it will cost you less if to building from test from scratch and make it more maintainable. So what I'm trying to say is that when you have static information, and there is two things about maintainability, right? You are page object model. Okay, so let's first of all look at the actual definition of page object model, right? POM, and this is probably a good source to read. They're pretty updated, right? Page object model is a design pattern popularly used in test automation framework that creates object repository for web UI elements. The advantage of page object model is that it reduces code duplication and improves test maintenance. Okay, so that's what I'm talking about, maintainability. And the maintainability gets improved when you follow the page object model. And why is that? Is because it is allowing you to reuse code that can be reused. So it removes the duplication, right? So what you are doing basically, you're creating a page. Um, how do I say this? This is like a um, um, folder, right? Into that folder for each page, home page, login page, you're putting your objects, meaning UI elements, and saying this element and that element belongs to this page, and you're putting those. And then later you're calling them as you need it, right? You're not rewriting again and again and again. What that does is that if something changes, then you go into a single point and make that update, and everybody else will be using that specific element. And so your test is not going to have thousands of failures after you make the change, right? Um, so let's read a little bit more, right? For each web page in the application, there should be a corresponding page class, as you can see, right? This page class will identify the web element of the web page and also contain page method, which performs operation on the web element. So, oh, what did I just do? 1 second. There's got to be some. I clicked on something. Okay, I'm just going to refresh. Okay. So now what they're saying is that for each of the page, we want to have the page method which performs operation to these web elements. Okay, so action should be containing within these pages. Name of this method should be given as per task they are performed. So meaning when you name something, these methods that you're going to be naming, it needs to be very easy read or relative name. The name should be easy to read and understand what it is that specific method will do. If a loader is waiting, if a loader is waiting for payment getaway to appear, POM method name can be wait for payment screen display. So something like this, right? It's very relevant to what the code is going to do for you. So just remember, page object model is to help you maintain your test automation framework. The other thing is about page object model is that no matter what you use, indirectly or indirectly, they will be using page object pattern. This pattern will be used no matter what, right? So any of the framework you use, tomorrow you're using, let's say Python, forget about Java, or you're using C#, in your company, and they're saying, okay, we're going to be using this because that's what we are using, right? So you just have to get used to that. So they're using C sharp, and you are writing your test. You're going to be seeing that they have some sort of pattern, right, or a page object pattern, where you are writing your test, um, following that practices to make sure that there is a good maintainability of that framework. Okay, so advantage, I'm going to just read a few things here, as a team, and then we'll move on and do our own thing, right? So why page object model, right? Starting an UI automation framework with Selenium WebDriver is not a tough task, right? That means literally you can go ahead and spend your half an hour and be able to create a framework. And everybody here somewhat created a framework, with an exception for a few people, right? So you were able to create a framework so far, right? That's a basic framework, and you can automate. You just need to find elements and perform operation, and that's what you guys have been doing so far, right? Nothing crazy. Consider this similar script to login website. So this is what we did actually, right? Just now, instead of login, we just went ahead and did the end-to-end flow. Okay, and then I'm not gonna read this whole thing here. I'm just gonna compare what's happening here, right? So non-page object structure, this would be calling a flat file, right? Because you got your web elements, methods, and everything within the same class. Okay, you got everything, actions and everything. This is something we call flat file, right? Everything is containing within the same class. Class A contains test method and also web element method. Now, page object based structure will contain by two different classes, or at least three different classes, depending on how far you want to go, right? So class A contains web element method, and then class B, another class, will be containing test methods. And we're going to be inheriting with class A or class B to make sure that we're grabbing the methods to use on our test, right? The advantage, we'll just read the advantage, and then we'll think about how to implement, and we're probably going to be following some of these to implement in our framework as well today. And then we also talk about the, let me see, what other topics did we talk about? Yeah. Okay, so once you finish the maintainability, and by the way, reusability, I'm going to put in the same category, because um, maintainability cannot be done without the page object model pattern. And then page object model, when you do page object model pattern, you're actually reusing your code. So this would be pretty much there, like hand to hand, right? I'm not gonna explain any further, since we're going to be touching that anyway, part of maintainability. Reusable code is basically when you write method that can be used anywhere, right? It could be, you could be calling places to places when you need it, instead of duplicating that piece of code. So they're pretty much same. So let's see, page object design pattern says operation and flow in the UI should be separated from verification. Okay, this concept makes our code cleaner and easy to understand, right? So why does that help? So if it's easier to understand, it's easier to actually update the test. So remember, every 2 weeks, code changes, the application changes, and we need to update our test. And since all of that are separated from verification, is really helps us to be able to update our test without going into each and every single test cases. The second benefit of the page object repository is independent of test cases. So we can use the same object repository for a different purpose with a different tool. For example, we can integrate page object model in Selenium with TestNG or JUnit for functional testing, at the same time with JBehave or Cucumber for the exception testing. So you could be using any one of these. By the way, Cucumber is something that we're going to be using. We're going to be creating next as a framework, right? So like I said, speed up, finish what you need to do, because the next framework is going to be a bit more sophisticated. Code becomes less and less optimized because of the reusable page method in the POM classes. That's good. And then we got method gets more realistic name, which can be easily mapped with the operation happening in UI. So when you rename, when you basically name methods, it really helps to understand, okay, you know what this means is going to go to the home page, right? And you're calling that instead of writing a code like this, you're just saying, okay, I'm going to call this instead. Okay. So it's really, there is a lot of um, benefit to page object model. Now, the second reason is a technical reason, right? So maintainability and reusability goes hand to hand. I'm just going to put them together. So in a workplace, if you happen to work in a place where they care about security, then obviously they are not going to make you do all this flat file. They will not tolerate username and password directly putting into a class. Okay. Nobody's going to tolerate that, right? So you cannot put username, you cannot expose username and password. Imagine you're putting username and password and then you're pushing that to outside world somehow, right? Or you pushing it to GitHub and now some anybody hacks into it and gets that username and password, they can do some damage, right? So nobody wants to pretty much allow you to have test data. Test data should never be directly in here, right? It should be called from a class. It should be encapsulated. So this is where we're going to be using our, how do I say this? Let me just go ahead and, who here knows four pillars of OOP? Anybody knows what OOP stands for?
Joel bhai,
Mhm.
the abstraction, polymorphism, encapsulation. Um, what else?
Inheritance.
Inheritance. Yes.
So 4 pillars of OOP, and this is basically for QA. If you're going into, let's say, test automation, this is such a basic question that nobody is going to ask you. Any of you guys interested going into development, they are going to ask you for sure, because we only do entry level development job. We don't go into like experience based development job, because you're not going to be able to last more than a day. So that's one of the questions they ask all the time, right? Which is, what is the 4 pillar of OOP concept? So OOP, what is the difference between OOP and page object model? OOP is basically same thing for code reusability, maintainability, and also be able to modularize your test and have, sorry, not just test, modularize your code so you can use again and again. One of the things encapsulation is basically when you don't want to expose your test data to outside world and be able to encapsulate that. The other thing is we're talking about inheritance. Inheritance is something that when you want to have class and you want to create objects in that class and be able to call that, right? So this is something that we will probably be doing today. And then if I have time, I'll cover like encapsulation, but if not, then inheritance is something that we'll be doing today. Then we got polymorphism, right? So it means it takes many forms and there are more to it, right? So we'll probably spend some time with these 4 pillars. Is going to help you understand. People that do not understand these things, these are actually Java OOP concepts. So try to, I would say, go back to Java a little bit. If you feel like that this is, this is something that you don't understand, it's okay. You'll grab the concept as we doing the work. Okay. So far we understand these are the 3 different features of a test framework that we need. It's a must have. There are more features that we're going to be talking about, but this is not only the 3 features that we're going to be, talking about. So just for the day, this is today's topic. So don't think that, okay, cross-browser maintainability and reusability should be like the only feature a framework should have. There are many more that that a framework should have, which is, there's one is like pretty much test data should be read from, let's say, an Excel. And then we also have like database connection. We need to make sure that our framework should be maintained. How do I say? Our framework should be CI/CD friendly, meaning it should be running on Junkin. So there are, a few more left that we need to talk about, but these are a good topic for you to actually bring up on an interview, right? Okay, so let's go into our framework and see what's something that we can improve just now, right? So one thing that I realize is that um, driver can be put into a separate class, and then we can call it here later, right? That's one thing that we can immediately do, right? And then we're going to be doing page object model, which means that anything that has, let's say, this is going to be into a page. So if this first name, last name is part of the, let's say, homepage, then I'm going to create a homepage class and then put all of these and calling them here directly. Okay, so this will give you guys an idea about how we are able to modularize, or at least reusable, make it reusable test. So, all right, so this is, I was looking for another source. Okay, source file needs to have another. Okay, so I'm gonna go ahead and create it myself. So Java. It's missing a main. Okay, so new directory. It's gonna say main. And it should be inside of source actually. Okay. So within main, what I will do is that I'll create a class and I'll do another one, let's say, like some sort of like base or something. Okay, instead of base, I'm going to create a file, and this is going to be a Java class, right? So it's going to be test. Okay, let's say, I can say driver if I want to, but I don't. Okay, so let's do driver for now, because this is where we're going to be doing driver configuration. And you see, notice like, so immediately says, okay, this file didn't exist before. Do you want to add to GitHub? Okay, so sure, we'll add that. And this is going to be our Java. Okay, so I think I messed up here. You should be saying C, right? So I'm going to delete that and go ahead and create it again. New, instead of file, I need to say class, right? So, and it's not giving me, okay, 1 second. I need to probably create a package first. Okay, so let me just get rid of this for now. Okay, it's giving me this problem. So I'll just go ahead and do here. For some reason, it's not even giving me options for like the classes. Okay. I'm gonna update this IntelliJ real quick. Okay, I'm gonna just go ahead and start open the IntelliJ again. Something is wrong with it. Okay, so opened it here. Okay, that's good. So this is the one, because I was in a wrong framework probably before. So I'm gonna go into the main, and as you can see, so now we have Java, and okay, so I'm just gonna go ahead and read this. Okay, that's good. So inside of Java, right on your main, so just follow my, I guess, hierarchy here. And what we need to do is first, if you click on new, as you can see, you got packages and all that stuff. So I'm gonna create a package. I'm gonna say COM, right? And the way, and this is what I'm trying to follow here, is that in a company, they usually, like, instead of writing, let's say your website is facebook.com, then they're going to say com dot, like pretty much com and then Facebook, right? And then they will provide like QA or whatever, right? So the way the classes start is like this in Java. You're going to probably get this file hierarchy, understand a little bit more later, but this is how they do it, and I'm following the same convention. But you don't really have to follow it. You can name it however you want. This is just a name. As you can see, com dot. The next one will be, let's say, in our case, what we're testing. We're testing like insurance. So insurance demo, right? So it should be something like that. When you create new package, you pretty much say com dot insurance demo, like .com goes in the front, and that's the way they actually follow. And then in this case, let's say we do QA, boom. So now you are into, oh, okay. So I want to have it separate actually. Click undo this. Okay, com, new, this, and then instead of that, I'm gonna say insurance, demo insurance. This should be inside of that. Boom. Okay. Refactor. Okay, good. So that's good. And then inside of that, I need to have the I'll just create the Java class, and then I'm going to say, in this case, I'll say driver, right? So this is where we're going to be doing driver configuration. And okay, so as you can see that this is our driver configuration here. The first thing first we need to do is we need to create a driver, right? So let's say before we call this driver class somewhere, so we want to say, so how many people remember what control flow is, like if and else when you did your Java, right? This is something that you're going to be using here, because let's say we want to be able to switch between driver. That's the idea, right? So now imagine this. So for now, string, let's say string browser is equal to, let's say, Chrome. For now, we'll leave it as Chrome, and then we'll go ahead and change that later. So we want to do it as Chrome for now. And then we're going to say, we're going to create a method, public static void, right? And then we want to say, like, let's say get driver or something like a get driver. So get driver, and here we're gonna say we actually need to put this in here. So the first thing we want to do Chrome driver, and the second we want to say like something like this, if browser is right equal to, if browser is equal to, so we have to say something like this. So here, when we are using if and else, and first part of the code is the Boolean, right? If is equal to, let's say, the same thing, if browser dot equal to Chrome, right? Then what we need to do, then we want to first set up. So I'm going to go ahead and go to my test case. The first thing I would like to take this and do this, right? That's what I need to do if that's the case. And create loader class, blah, blah, action, more action. Okay, so notice driver is equal to new driver. So we need to kind of say, here we need to say web driver actually. And it's no longer upset. So we got a web driver extended. I can do Chrome driver too. Web driver, Okay, 1 second. Create to driver in driver. Okay. So I'll just expose it outside first. Web driver. Okay, non-static field driver cannot be referred from a static content. Okay, that's true. So let me just click that. Boom. Okay, so real quick. Okay, so go back to our test class real quick and then see how we handled it there, so we can do the same, right? So what we did, we got drivers this, we exposed the driver outside, and then we're calling it here, right? That's what we did. And the other one is static, so we gotta change that type. That's where the problem we're seeing. So if we do this and we're still seeing this issue, and okay, so now we're going to say public void instead of public static. That's where the issue was getting to us, right? So, okay. So now when we did this, right, what else do we want to do? So if we want to run Chrome, and by the way, so this is our, for a control flow, this is our Boolean. What do you think is going to happen right now? Is it going to say true or false? This line right here, 13.
Is true,
Is going to be true, and why?
because we declare the browser value is Chrome right now.
Okay, good. So then if that's the case, then let's say you want to change it in a single place. So later, if you want to do Firefox, what can we expect, right? So then, okay, so this is closed, this is open, okay, that's good. And then we're gonna say else if, right? So ELSEIF browser, again, browser is equal to, let's say in this case, is Firefox, right? So dot equals to FF, right? So we'll just do FF for Firefox. Maybe this is going to be good. And that. So then for Firefox, we need to, I know many of you guys probably tried and it didn't work. And one thing that we need to do for Firefox is that this needs to be changed. The first thing, right? It's called GECKO, Gecko. In Firefox, they have the web Chrome, just like Chrome driver, they have a binary, and it's called Gecko driver, right? So that's one thing needs to be changed. And the second thing needs to be changed is that instead of Chrome driver, it should be Gecko driver. And you have to download that and put it just like this. You have to put it somewhere. So in this case, I don't know if we're putting it right here. Yeah, we're putting it right here. So now, as you can see, it says Chrome. So we need to add a new one. So we're going to say file, actually directory. We're going to say Firefox. And then we're going to say driver. And we're going to get download Gecko driver, right? So let's see. Okay, so there are multiple versions of this, definitely. And if I want 29, so this is, okay, let's see. I didn't download this Gecko driver for a long time, so I don't know. I gotta find the right place.
But yeah, I guess I can help you. You can try it here in the GitHub link. It was there.
First one, okay.
Yeah.
And then, okay.
It should be some at the bottom. Yeah.
All right, so it's right in there. Okay, that's good because it looks very different. But anyway, so we got different versions here. We got Mac, so I need the Mac version actually. And then we got Linux and all that. So Firefox has to be always like different. The way they did it versus Chrome. Chrome is pretty seamless. They made a bit more easier for us. So just note that for Gecko driver, we have to download from their GitHub. So now we got the Gecko driver. I'm going to go ahead and put it in our path before we can use. So it goes right inside. Click refactor, boom, add. Okay, so once we did that, we have the Gecko driver now. Now I'm going to say copy path. I'm going to copy the relative path. So driver.firefox.gecko, right? So this path is fine. Okay. And instead of Chrome driver, we're going to say Firefox driver. Okay, so once that is done, we're pretty much good to go. So either one is going to open and we're going to be able to use this, guys. So the next thing is we need to like have some sort of return because otherwise we need to use like this driver, right? So we need to be able to return the driver and be able to use that. Let's see, we're going to get to that part in a bit. So that's the first thing we did. Okay. Okay, so now that is done, we can go ahead and take this and be able to use it in our, we can basically extend to it, right? So let's see. Test case, we're going to say extends. Import driver class. Okay, we got to import it also. Import class. Okay, that's the one, right? So we want to import. Okay, good. So right there. So just keep in mind that we have to do it this way. All right, let's see what we're missing. Okay, so now for the, so do we need this line of code here for all of the test cases? We, since we created a driver, we probably don't need it. So we can have it and it will work, but it's duplication at this point. So we're going to replace this real quick and use it for our test case. In the meantime, let me just go ahead and see if this is something that we wanted to. Test base, okay. Okay, so we have to initialize it, instantiate the class itself. So we're gonna go ahead and do that. So driver, as a driver, is going to be equal to new driver, right? So driver, and we're gonna say, and we're gonna do lowercase driver in this case, or we can do D itself. So just to, for now, I'm gonna leave it as D to avoid any sort of confusion. And once we do that, we can use D, right? So we're gonna say this, and we're gonna say, look, D dot, is a get driver right here. D dot get driver, right? So now this guy, this pretty much this guy is kind of like getting upset, right? So if we replace it with this, then still we have a problem, right? Because this method doesn't have any sort of return. We need to be able to return the driver itself. So far, half of the work is done. So you go into this method by do command B, right? So if you want to, let's say, learn some sort of shortcuts, then you do command B in it, and it gets you this, right? So in this case, we're gonna say, so if and else, we got this. This is, so we're gonna say return, and okay, driver return is driver itself. And now it's going to give us some sort of error. it says make get driver return blah blah, right? So remember, the type of access modifier we're using didn't include, right? So public WebDriver, right? So we didn't really specify what type of thing it is, right? What type of um, method that is, right? So we had to include like WebDriver right here to make it return the driver type itself. So if you use static and void, void means no return. So void would not really help you accomplish this. So now that we have driver as a return, we can say, like, if we do get driver, the get driver is actually the return of that, right? So what I'm going to do is that I'm going to just post it right here. I'm going to say our current driver, so we don't have to replace any of the code, right? So driver, lowercase driver is equal to d.get driver, but we need to say what type of thing is this, right? So web driver. As you can see, boom. Now the entire code, everything in this code is actually good to go, right? Do we need this before? We should have probably include this inside of before, like right here. So get that initialized before, so before setup, and we need to have this driver over there. So web driver is equal to driver, and then this is just instance variable. Okay, fix our code. Okay, so we don't really need this here. Okay. All right. I know it's confusing. I'm going to explain again, reiterate through this, and then we're going to go over and then see what it is that we need to explain, right? So far, so good. I see some red somewhere. I'm just going to go ahead and check. What am I missing? Okay. Okay. So right here. Oh, why do I have twice? Okay. Okay, that's good. No longer red. Okay, so we're gonna run this and we can kind of understand what's happening here. And then first let's run it and then run our test. Okay, and the test is running just fine, and we made some significant changes here, right? And we have also used inheritance in here, right? So, okay, so again, my test may be outdated, so let's just at least the test. Oh, sorry, the test passed. I didn't think it. Okay, so then we do the same thing right here. So just to make sure the test finishes this by adding this last thing. All right, so let me just reiterate and go over what we just did, because there was a lot of work that we just did here. We no longer need this import here. So what we did is we created a package, and we did it in a way that a conventional way people do, meaning in a workplace, you're going to see people always naming like com dot this and com dot that. It is because that's the way, conventional way they name it. The domain, we basically use the domain itself to create the class, create the package. The package will contain the domain name. So it's going to be doing it the opposite way, com dot the domain itself. Underneath, inside of that, we created a driver called driver. So a class called driver. And in that, we created a method that is a WebDriver method, okay? In that method, it has a return type, which is a driver. So we do get returned as a driver. And then in that method, you can actually pass an argument, right? To say, I want to run it out here, I want to run it there. Now that we have 12, right, we can, now line number 12, right, and we can specify either directly into the method itself and say we want to use this, or we can specify it here in one single place to say we want to run it on Chrome. Typically what happens in a workplace is that we try to use like some sort of configuration file. So we're going to use configuration file, and we're going to say, okay, this is coming from the configuration file. Or we can directly say, you know what, our browser should be able to take different options, right? The method should be able to take parameters, right? So how can we just not do this, right? And then do it right directly from here. So what I can do is that I can say string. So let's just do this first real quick, string, and we're gonna say browser. We're gonna be looking into browser. So now it's no longer upset, but then our test case is probably gonna be upset now, right? So now you see this is red. So it's gonna say, okay, d.getDriver, d.getDriver, and it says it takes a type, right? Which is the type is gonna be, we have to add something within, right? So if I say ff, remember what ff means? You guys remember?
Firefox.
Firefox, right? So how many people think this is gonna run on Firefox? And how many people this is gonna throw an error?
Yeah, it should run Firefox.
Right. And the purpose of that is just to give you guys a difference that we created a method first that didn't take parameter, right? And we just had a static variable, right? And now we have a method that takes parameter, right? And it can take more than once, right? And you can say, I want to have another parameter, right? So in this case, one parameter takes browser, and then as soon as browser gets passed on from the method being used, it will use ff for remaining. So let's run it. I don't expect the Firefox to run just because the version of Firefox, I don't know which version I have in my machine, but if it runs, then it's good. But if it doesn't, then we'll have to fix it, right? So I'm gonna go ahead and run it. Okay, and it's a Gecko driver cannot be accessed. Okay, click OK. And for the Mac users, when you do that, when you see something like that, what I want you to click on next is that security and privacy. And the purpose of that is what's happening. You see, it says your computer is blocking Gecko driver. Okay, so you want to allow that. That's the first thing you want to do. Once you're done, then you can run it again. And this time around is going to be similar. So you're going to click on open. Okay. And now you should see Firefox being open. So in my case, Firefox opened. I don't expect it to pass, but if it passes, that means I got lucky. The reason I'm saying that is because my Firefox, I installed it maybe like a long time ago, right? And I didn't update or do anything to it. So if there is a failure, then yes. Let's see, verified. So verified worked. Tear down didn't work for some reason. So exception, let's see. Try to run command without establishing a connection. Okay, so something happened. The tear down basically closed the driver and then try to quit it. So I'm gonna leave this to one of them closed for now. We don't want to create no confusion. And like just run it one more time and it should be good to go. And you see a lot more console error, or at least the suggestions in red showing up for Firefox, and it's because maybe the way the driver is. So, okay, perfect. And you can see the red ones, right? So one thing that as a test engineer, you need to get used to is by reading, right? Not everything is going to be an error. So in this case, this is red, and it's telling you some things like, okay, make sure you do this. You can add different capabilities for Firefox. As you can see, Firefox bin, you can add those things to it to make it more scoped, meaning fits your purpose. And also you see like no setting. So search setting, no setting file exist, meaning new profile. So we didn't even set up a profile for Firefox, and we'll have to do that at some point. For now, it serves our purpose, meaning we wanted to isolate our driver somewhere and be able to pass it directly to what needs to be used, right? So that's what we did. We were able to inherit, meaning we use inheritance here to go ahead and pretty much have a driver in a separate place. That's the first thing. Anybody with any questions on this? And we're gonna move on. We're gonna move on to page object model. And here is sky's the limit, right? What can you do with it? You can do a lot more things, right? Depending on what is the need, the requirement of your company. If they said, okay, we want the driver to be able to do this, or we want IE, we want Chrome, we want the iPhone, whatever, right? right? Everything can be added. So with else if, right? All of it, right? So you just do another else if, and you're going to be able to go ahead and add those different capabilities to run on different browsers. So this was enabled. At this point, this is enabled cross-browser testing, right? So now on demand, if I go to my test case, I just change it to one place, and it will go ahead and basically run it. Now, when we follow page object model, you're going to see that this is going to be used somewhere else. We don't want it to do it here, because when we do it here, then it creates some problems, right? Is that you have to go to every single test class and be able to change this to Firefox, right? We want to have single place, right? We want to do it in single place. This is just the progress we made up to this much because we have only one test case, but we're about to make it one step further. So I will move on to the page object model in a few minutes. I just want people to acknowledge that they understood and we can move forward. Anybody here that did not understand and need me to explain? So we did inheritance, right? And we created a separate class and we have our object in that class and we're just calling it here, okay? Okay, so it seems like everybody understood. That's good. So we're going to use now some page object model. Remember, page object model says we need to have a class name, right? So we're going to basically just go ahead and create here, maybe like something called, okay, so that should be inside of, here. We're going to say package, right? So yeah, I'll do a package and I'll say, in this case, what do you want to call this, right? Do you want to call this as insurance demo page? Okay, code page. I'm going to say code request. Okay, so maybe that's better. Okay. So code request page, right? That's the first thing. And in the code request page, what we want to do is that we want to create a class, right? And we want to say maybe the first, okay. So go back to the page 1, page 2, page 3. So it's going to be very simple, but okay. In here, I'm going to create a new class. I'm going to say page 1, right? That's our page 1, and we're going to go this way. But you got the picture, right? If this was home page, if this was, different part of the page, you would name it that way. So we're going to do page 1 here, and I'm going to do a class real quick. And go ahead and add this. So for page 1, and we are going to then use, okay. So on the page 1, we're going to extend our driver, right? So we're going to do extend, we're going to say driver. And we'll basically tell you why we're doing that, because we're going to create methods here, right? So page 1, right? And then we're going to say, okay, so this is what it is. Before going to page 1, we need to basically do get to that URL, right? So what we're going to do, we're going to basically create a method here that will allow us to go to that specific URL, right? Let me just go ahead and okay, so anybody so far, any questions before we do that? Okay, so how do we create a method? Who wants to answer that? How do we create a method in Java? You guys, can you guys hear me?
Yes, you're right.
Okay, so how do we create a method?
The access modifier.
Okay. Public.
And the return type.
Okay, so let's say this has no return.
Okay, and then method name.
Okay. So I'm going to say visit, something like this. I'm going to give it a nice name. Visit insurance demo page, right? Auto
Then
insurance.
yeah, second bracket.
Okay. So that's good. Now, when we do that, remember we have to do exactly the same thing. We're going to remove this stuff from here, things that we're doing here, right? So I'm going to go ahead and take it to our page one. And so go ahead and do that. And then we just say driver dot. So you see now it's telling us like you can define element, blah, blah, all that stuff. So we're going to say get, right? So driver dot get, we're going to put some things in it. Let me see why this is red.
Joel, there's a double class over there.
Oh, yeah. No, oh, okay. I just copied something else. Okay, my bad. When I was copying. Okay, cool. So now that we did this, remember like this line right here, right? We want this to be a method, right? So I'm going to take this from here. I see how get this and get that is gone, right? So let's go to the page one. We'll go ahead and do this in a bit. So driver.get is going to be this one, right? So URL, oops, copy the exact done. So now this is page one, right? So do we really need to inherit driver into this one? I don't think so, right? Because we don't really need to inherit the driver in here, but we need to be able to also expose the driver itself, right? So we're going to say, we're going to create another one, and we're going to basically, we're going to say web driver. So that's going to be web driver, and it's going to be web driver or something, or something like that. And then we want to then say return driver. So this driver will be returned. Okay, so now we really not need this. Okay, so I'm getting more complicated here. Okay, so we don't need to extend that. We're going to say extend page, right? So extend page one. That. So we're extending page one. We will leave the import for the driver. Let's see, remove that for now. Okay, I'll keep that until we no longer need it. Okay, so then where is this upset? Everywhere is upset, right? So we have to kind of like, so page one, and we're gonna say page, right, whatever. So, and then, okay, we don't really need this page dot, right? So driver, I think this was the name that we did here. Real quick, page one, okay, 16, this 18 related promise, fine. So driver itself, right? So page.driver should return the driver itself, right? So how many people feel like this is getting too much? Okay, so page one, and then we're gonna say page.driver. Okay. Second there, click undo. Let's see, new page, okay. Classes page 1. Okay, how am I not able to? Okay. One dot. Okay, there we go. Okay, perfect. So now, okay, we're gonna fix this in a bit, right? So beforehand, we're gonna say page 1 dot get driver, and we're gonna say driver to this, and we have to say something like this. Okay, some people will probably feel like, okay, this is being more complicated without some sort of like reasoning, right? We're gonna get to that in a second. Okay, so then we got ourselves a driver. So now driver is gonna be able to work with the rest of it, and I'm just naming it in a way that is easier. So now first thing first is that this guy, right? This guy is going in there, and so this line no longer needed. We're gonna say page dot visit, and this should pretty much do that work for us. Okay. So page.visit this will pretty much do that. So if you do Command B on it, and you'll see it's directly taking you to this method itself. So just know what Command B does, right? I'm gonna go ahead and run it real quick. Okay. So driver was pretty much null, right? Okay, so if we do this, okay, I gotta go into driver first, right? So let's see what's going on. I gotta say get driver, and I gotta say the Chrome, whatever, right? So that's where the problem is, right? So I gotta use the get driver method. Page 1, we didn't use get driver method. Okay, so driver, and I'm gonna say driver get driver, right? So d dot get driver, and in this case we're gonna say whatever Firefox if you want. And then we probably don't. Okay, so driver. Okay, so get driver, and then we have to say driver is equal to that too. Okay, so that should solve the problem that we just noticed. And notice now it's not longer null, it's running the test. It's right here because we didn't really pass that information. Okay, so now we have a failure somewhere. And so one thing is that notice like it's telling me exactly where the failure is. And right now, whatever I'm doing is called code refactor, right? So this method worked already, right? Driver page. Okay, so now if that's the case, right, and it worked for this one, why is it not working? So driver.page get driver, right? We need to find that out, right? So So let me go into the get driver. So get driver is like the web driver return is this exact driver, right? So now if I want to see this page.driver, okay, so let me just read it for a second. What's really happening. And this is where the problem is, right? The driver couldn't get that title, right? So what we're gonna do, we're gonna convert that into a method because no matter what, we still want to be able to, we still want to make this whole thing as a method, right? So imagine something like this page dot saying, let's say verify the first page title, right? Something like this. So we take this whole code, right? And we go into, I'm just not gonna take it right now. Okay. So I'm gonna create very similar to this, another method right here. And I'm gonna say verify my first page title, right? So that's the first thing we want to do. Do we really need this? No, we don't. I just trying to get the template out of it. So we get rid of this. And then we're gonna go back in here. We're gonna take the whole thing and go back to the page one, paste it here, right? So what we are seeing right here, it says assertion problem. So add library. Let's see, what's the problem with assert? Okay, so I'm gonna go ahead and remove assert from here since it's upset instead of doing a lot of things. And I'm going to go ahead and remove the expected data, right? Expected title. So we're gonna say string. Oh, we need to be able to keep that too here. Right? Okay. So I'm gonna go back here. I'm gonna see what's for the assert, right? So I'm gonna take this import and I'm gonna post it in. I'm gonna paste it in here. It should fix it. Undo that. Okay. Okay, so assert seems like no longer an issue since we added this Maven thing. Okay, so now what we want to do, expected title, we're gonna say string expected title. Casing. So we take this, go into our test itself, and we're gonna say page dot. So verify page, and it says it takes expected title. So this is where we're gonna be adding the expected title. You see, it needs the expected title itself. So let me just go ahead and take this whole thing. And now we're not gonna have to put it directly in here, right? And expect title should be, this should be same. So I'm gonna fix that in a second. Let me just go ahead and paste this before I lose it. Okay, this is our expected title. I'm gonna go back in here and we need this exact thing right here, boom, done. So at least I know that page number 30, sorry, the 32 is not gonna fail, right? Up to 32 is not going to fail. Okay, so then we're gonna create another one and then we're gonna continue to like pretty much do it this way. Look how clean that is, like up to 32. So go ahead and run it and then we're gonna do more refactoring, okay? Okay, so notice like now it's filling it here, right? So when you do refactoring, you fix one line and then you have to go to the next line and fix that, right? So again, we now need to be able to create an action method to click on the code request link, right? So before I do that, I'm going to go into my page 1. Again, this is probably in page 1. Then we're going to have to do page 2, page 3, and page 4. For today's purpose, we're going to just stick to page 1. And then maybe another day, we're going to isolate the best practices is that we want to create different pages for different pages, right? So this one is code request link, right? So element, and then we want to click on it, right? Click code request link. Okay. Okay, so we're gonna click on code request link, and this is the, we don't really need this. This is not something that it's probably not a return. Or we don't really have to have any sort of, what's that called? Parameter, right? So now we take the whole thing from here and we're gonna basically edit here. We're gonna say page dot click. All right, and that's it. That's all we need to do here. So we go back to our page, we add these 2 lines, and notice it's happy and healthy, and we're good to go, right? We don't really have to do anything. Okay, but then we probably want to do this one separate because we want to put it somewhere else. But anyway, action and the, it serves the purpose right now. Okay, and then we got to do the remainings, right? So it's a lot of work that we'll have to refactor. As you can see, even this guy is upset. So let's see what we are going to now run it. And all right, it clicked on it and it got to this page, and now it doesn't know what to do. So you click on it, and this is the next one. So validate that we are in the code page form. And so basically the whole thing is to validate, right? So okay, let's see. Okay, good thing, so notice one thing, you guys, because I wrote the comment, I am able to read and understand what the code is doing right away, right? I don't have to like kind of read the code itself. So it's really easier when you have some sort of comments. So this is the header text, right? So the whole thing should be 1, right? So I'm gonna now go into, it says verify code page form page, code form page. Okay, so verify we are in code form page, right? So go ahead and use that as a template, and we're gonna say verify I am, or verify user is on code form page, right? So that is our method, and then we take the whole entire code from here because it's validation. And then we're gonna go ahead and paste it here. It looks like it's all good to go. I don't have to do anything because remember, the reason I didn't have to do a lot of changes is because I named the driver exactly that. So we don't have to go and change the names also. But it may be a little bit confusing to you guys, right? Because it's like, oh, wait a minute, drivers is everywhere now. So we'll get to that in a second with the questions. If you guys have any questions. Page dot verify that user is on code page. That's it. So far, again, notice how nice your code is looking, right? If we are following the page object pattern. Okay, so I'm gonna go ahead and, oh, it's doing in a debug mode. We're not gonna do that. We're gonna run it regular. And we also have to learn how to do debugging, right? So we'll do that in a few more classes. Okay, so let's see where it's failing next, right? And because we're doing a lot of refactoring, it's going to continue to fail until we fix everything. So the next one is fill out the first name. Okay, so now we take the whole thing. Okay, and then first name, right? That's the one thing, right? Fill out form. Okay, so this is still in the first page. Okay, so I'm gonna just, this time I'm gonna write it so you guys know what I'm doing. Public void, again, no return. Fill, okay, enter first name, right? And I'm gonna take it as string. So it takes something, right, rather than nothing. So I can put it directly from there. So I can reuse this piece of code later. I'm gonna go ahead and do this, and then first name is fine. Tester should be the string name, right? So name, and I'm gonna say go ahead and use that as a um, name right here, and that's it. And this should be it for it, and it should work, right? So what I'm going to replace with one line, page dot enter first name, and in this case, tester is that string, and we don't need this whole entire thing, right? So last name, we're going to do the same thing. So instead of running it again, I'm just going to go ahead and do this, right? So last name is pretty much same. So I'm going to copy this, and instead of first name, I'm going to say last name. Okay, F name, and I'm going to say L name, and it takes a value, which is fine, right? And then I gotta go back. Oh, I got a last name. Okay, that's good. Okay. Enter last name, and then we put the same, this, and we are all good to go. Okay. So notice how fast I did this. Is pretty dangerous because maybe I missed something. I didn't, I should have focused a little bit more and then look at the code and everything, but I copied and pasted. So I'm just gonna go and look at it. So L name better be the ID. There is a chance that this ID may not be existing the way I did it, but hopefully it's fine. So, and then as you can see, this is where I need to change this, right? So they're same variable, right? First name, I gotta change this to last names because I copied it, right? And that's why it's always good to local variable is redundant, right? So that means actually it's not being used as much. Okay. What's the fix they're suggesting? Let's see. We just do inline variable instead. So it's saying like, you know what? No need for this. Just do this instead. You see. So sometime your ID will suggest something again. Like when we did this is because we wanted to create variables and learn a little bit. But now for now we're good to go with this. So we should be fine. Okay. So then we got first name, enter last name, and it should be pretty good. And then we still have the value problem here, right? Expected first name and last name. So we're going to fix this in a second. I'm going to just go ahead and do this for now, so it doesn't really read out everything. Any question, you guys? Because like, look how we are pretty much taking our existing test and making it into follow like some sort of pattern where we are locating things that belong to a page into that page, right? Using methods. And now we are able to use again and again. So imagine you want to go into the first name and then enter something else again, enter something else again. Or if you're creating another test, you don't have to do this again. You can just call it from the page one class. So who can at this point describe the benefit of this, what we're doing right now?
I think will by code reusability.
Right. And the entire topic that we actually, sorry, I'm just chewing something because I had a light breakfast. So maintainability, how is it relation to reusability? Like what is the relation between maintainability and reusability?
So we create a method in a class and then can repeatedly call from that class.
So in terms of benefit, right? So benefit wise, what is the relation between, so imagine like benefit, right? So if you have a maintainable automation framework, what is the benefit for reusability, right? Or reusability will increase the maintainability, correct?
So yeah, so if any element or any value change, just we can change the value from that class.
Single.
So it automatically affect the
where else?
In the main test class.
All right, so to explain your point, imagine like these test cases, you have like 2,000 of them, okay? Everywhere you're entering first name and last name, right?
Yeah.
Something changed. All of a sudden, developer decided to change the ID, right?
Yes.
F name is no longer F name, is let's say first name. Now what all you have to do is come to this point and 44 to 47 line number into this class. You're changing this, and every other 2000 plus cases will be
Changed.
using the updated method, because this is the method you're calling. You're not actually putting it directly without you're not copying and pasting a lot of the code, right? So that's the thing, right? So if you compare to, like, if you have that directly um on your class, then the problem will be you go into each and every single class and you update
Change every single
every single classes.
Mhm.
Yeah. So you guys see immediate benefit to this, right? Um, so now it's already 2:01. I'm gonna, like, obviously I'm gonna continue to do this. I know this is something that it will take a little bit of time for many of you guys to grasp. A lot of people are behind with the end-to-end framework automation. And also, I believe, do you guys have any project from Shantabai so far? You guys got any project to do?
Yeah, last yesterday, Shantava some give us some things to do. I think it's not submitted here.
Okay. So what I will do for today, I'll leave it up to here. And any of you guys can, if you guys can go up this much, remember, it's the same framework we're working. We're able to isolate the driver, and then we're able to follow the page object model. The next class, we're going to rest this framework. No longer going to be using this framework. The next class, we're going to be using a new framework, or maybe, like, by what I mean by next class is that when we complete everything for this framework, it could be next class or it could be next class after, right? So depending on how fast you guys are going. So once we finish that, then we're going to be creating another framework called BDD, Behavior Driven Framework. And we're going to use, right away, we're going to use page object model. Right away, we're going to be using different, let's say for the driver isolation, we're using utility and other things. We're going to be going right away to that. We're not going to do it from all the way from, like, okay, beginning, like, let's do this first and then we go and improve. We're going to improve the day one. And it's because we went through the page object model. So we're going to give in 2 more classes to make sure that people get comfortable with page object model. And then we're going to go into BDD. Once we finish BDD, you're going to have your first automation project. Once you finish, then you're done, right? You're done with automation. Pretty much you are done with automation side of the testing, okay? And so we're very near where, like, let's say 4 class or 5 class, you're going to be done with automation. Similarly, Shantava is giving you guys a project. Once you finish the project, then you're pretty much done with that specific subject, right? That shows that, yes, you finished the project. That means you are capable of doing things that he is expecting you to do. So once that is done, once Shantava's project is done, then it's going to be my project. It's going to be done. And then we're going to start teaching you guys some tools, and the tooling, learning how to, like, do Jira and other things, like 15, 20, 30 minutes per person. It shouldn't take a long time. And followed by, we're going to be start asking around, like, hey, what do you feel? How do you feel about going into market? What we want to do is that it's right now is March, right? And at least some of you guys that are out there feeling like you're ready and comfortable, I want to take those guys, and I don't want to rush anybody. Okay, so don't get the wrong idea. We're not rushing anybody here, and this is only for the people that feel more comfortable and finish things early. We're gonna probably look into like 2 more classes, and then we're gonna say, okay, maybe 23rd, 24th of April, we're gonna say, okay, so you finished project 1 and project 2, and so do you feel like you're ready to go to the market? All right, so if you do, then we're gonna start marketing. Um, Typically, like, if you, like, pretty much listen and not, let me just go ahead and, because this is not relevant to this today's class, I'm gonna go ahead and stop recording.